Alright, 今天晚上是第二部分 is part 2 tonight, and it is the Lord pleased with how you treat your pastor? 主喜悦你对待牧师的方式吗？ And so this is actually last week we spent a lot of time looking at the qualifications of a pastor. 上周我们花了很多时间，好多时间学习耶和华上帝对他的牧师们的要求是什么。And so this is extremely important that all of us need to know that when it comes to being a pastor, in God's eyes, not just anyone can become a pastor. 所以就是挺重要的，因为对于上帝的牧师们，不是所有的人能成为牧师。And when it comes to a lot of people talk about, like even today, I was looking at different websites and things like that deal with if you want to become a pastor, what are the requirements? 然后今天我也在查网络看看有没有网站说了，如果要成为牧师的话，有什么要求。And it was interesting because a lot of the websites that I went to, they talk about things that are good, but none of them mentioned the requirements that God actually has in in 2 Timothy chapter 2. 对，他们说很多有意思挺好的要求，但是他们很少说了耶和华对他的牧师们的要求。And so last week we looked at that because God does have a higher standard for his pastors. Like the way that God, the requirements that God has for a Christian and a pastor are the same. However, God has even more for the pastors. 所以上帝对他的百姓的要求跟牧师一样的，可是牧师是更多的。And so there are many things that can actually disqualify a person from being a pastor. 所以也有很多事情，就是特别是做了坏事或者犯罪以后，可能让这个人不可以继续做牧师。And so when it comes to being a pastor, if God has high standards, high requirements for his pastor, the church should as well. 那如果上帝对他的牧师们的要求比较高，然后教会也应该比较高。So let's look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 12 and 13. 帖撒罗尼迦前书第5章12到13节 says, And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you. 弟兄们，我们劝你们的敬重，那在你们中间的劳苦的人，就是在主里面治理你们劝诫你们的 and to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake, and be at peace among yourselves. 又因他们所做的工，用爱心格外尊重他们，你们也要彼此和睦。So 6 areas of self-awareness concerning you toward your pastors. 关于你对你的牧师自省的6个方面。There are people in this world, all over the world that claim to be pastors. 所以在这个世界有很多，所有的国家有各种不一样的牧师。And not every single person that claims to be a pastor is from the Lord. 然后不是所有的牧师们是从上帝来的。The same with prophets in the Old Testament, 特别是在旧约跟先知一样的。And just because a person says that they're a prophet from the Old Testament, a prophet of the Lord, doesn't mean that they are a prophet of the Lord. 在旧约你知道吗？也有很多假的先知，所以如果他们说我是耶和华的先知，那不一定是真的是从耶和华来的。So in the Old Testament, there are a lot of prophets, and a lot of them say that they're prophets of the Lord. However, if you study, especially in Jeremiah, Isaiah, etc., you will find out that there are a lot of false prophets, even though they claim to be prophets of the Lord. The same thing is with the pastors today. 还有我们现在的时代跟牧师跟旧约的假的先知一样的 just like there's a lot of false prophets in the Old Testament, there are also a lot of false pastors today. 所以在旧约也有很多假的先知，现在也有很多假的牧师。And one of the things that we spent last time a lot of time on was God's requirements for pastors. 所以上周我们花了比较更多的时间学习上帝的 对他的牧师们的要求。And one of the ways that apart from the requirements is that we need to look at is a person the pastor a man after God's own heart, kind of like David. 那除了上帝的要求，我们也要看什么他的做法，他想亲近神，他想追求耶和华吗？因为就是也是非常重要的。Jeremiah 3:15, 耶利米书第3章15节 And I will give you pastors according to mine heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. 我也必将和我心的牧者赐给你们，他们必以知识和智慧牧养你们。True pastors will feed you God's word. They will help you to know and understand the heart of the Lord, because they are first men after God's own heart. 有一些人自称是牧师，其实这个不对。真实的牧师会让你是更用神的话语，让你用他的智慧还有他的知识带领你，因为他们知道，如果他们为你或者让你是更好的，他们也会什么？也会知道你会亲近神，也跟你跟上帝的有一样的关系。So 6 areas of self-awareness concerning you towards your pastors. 所以关于你对你的牧师自省的6个方面。Number 1, be self-aware. How is your relationship with your pastor? 第一个，自省你和牧师的关系是怎么样的。Verse 12, 12节 And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you. 弟兄们，我们劝你们敬重那在你们中间的劳苦的人。Now, you might say, well, first off, pastor, this is talking about a church. And there's many people in the church that serve in the church. 那也说了，牧师就是一个对教会。那在教会里面也有很多弟兄姊妹们也是侍奉耶稣。How do you know it's not talking about them? 你怎么知道不是现在保罗的意思是他们不是牧师？ Well, if you keep reading, it talks about those who are over you, meaning that they're in leadership positions. 然后你继续读的话，保罗告诉我们他是你们的头，就是 like 领导你们。And so just like how on Sunday we have been talking about in the family unit that there is a hierarchy, there is an order of authority the same way in the church, the same way in the Trinity. 就比如我们周日也说了在三位一体，在家庭里面有不同的权位教会也是一样的。And so, yes, we are all Christians, we are all children of God. However, God has different roles, different requirements for different people in the church. 对，我们都是神的儿女，都是弟兄姊妹们，我们都在耶和华的眼睛中是挺宝贵的，但是我们的角色，我们的工作都不一样的。And just like when you become a Christian, when any person becomes a Christian, the Holy Spirit gives that person a special, unique gift. 就比如你成为基督徒之后，圣灵会赐给你特别的属灵的恩赐。And your spiritual gift might be totally different than mine. 然后你的属灵的恩赐可能跟我完全不一样的。And that is how God works. God doesn't give every single thing to every single person. 所以神不会把所有的属灵的恩赐，所有的能力赐给一个人。He takes them and separates them. 他把他们分开的。So this is one of the ways that God works within His church. 所以上帝在他的教会这样的分开他的属灵的恩赐。And right now, Paul, this chapter is getting ready to, or this book is getting ready to finish up. 然后这个信准备写完了。And Paul is saying that those who are over you, remember them, know them, and show the honor and respect that is due towards them. 然后保罗因为他准备写完这信，他说你应该知道，你应该认识谁是你的教会的头，谁是领导你的教会，就是 like 牧师长老什么的，然后要给他们荣耀，要遵行他们 ，no 遵守他们。And this is very important because there are like one of the questions is if you don't really know your pastor, if you don't have a relationship with him, then how can you show him honor and respect? 那如果你 不认识你的牧师，那你或者你跟他的关系不是那么好，那你怎么给他尊重？你怎么给他遵守吗？ And so there's a lot of when churches get bigger, it's more difficult to know who your pastor is, or you might know him, but does he know you? 那如果你参加比较大的教会，那你真的认识你的牧师吗？你可以说我知道就是他，但是他认识你吗？你认识他吗？你们的关系是怎么样的？ So how is your relationship with your pastor? And the idea here is that in the Bible, especially when the church age started up, that these churches were small and people would have known. Like if you're gathered in a home, you're gathered in a small building, it's very easy to know who your pastor is, and he's going to know your strengths and weaknesses and vice versa. 那教会的时代开始的时候，他们可能在他们的房间聚会，或者在一个小小的店有在一起聚会。那这样的话可以很容易认识你的牧师，你的牧师也可能认识你，也知道你的缺点是什么，他也可能知道你的缺点是什么。And this is how it's supposed to be. 应该是这样子。However, one of the issues that the church has right now, all over the world, is that there are some very, very big churches. 那我们教会的时代，现在很大的问题是什么？我们现在有很多教会的参加的弟兄姊妹们是挺多的，真的很多。And the more brothers and sisters that attend the church, it's more and more difficult to have a real deep connection with those people in the church, because they can come and go, and most of the time the pastors might not even know who this person is. Maybe they know their name, but do they know? Are they at school, or are they working? What are their difficulties in life? Does this person have any sicknesses? 那如果教会是挺大的，很多弟兄姊妹们来参加他们的聚会，那这个牧师真的认识他的小羊吗？他知道他哪来上课吗？他知道他在做什么工作，而且他知道他健不健康。And this is how the church should be. 教会应该是这样子。And the more the pastor knows, and vice versa, the more the people know the pastor, the stronger the relationships can be within the church. 那如果牧师更认识他的弟兄姊妹们，或者弟兄姊妹们更认识牧师，那他们的关系会更好的。So how is your relationship with your pastor? 你和牧师的关系怎么样？ And if you think, well, my pastor, I really don't know him. I know who he is, but I don't know a whole bunch about him. The question then is, well, why? 那如果你对我说了，牧师，我知道他是谁，但是我不太认识他，我不知道他喜欢什么，那我问你为什么？ And if you might say, well, it's because there's so many people in the church, every time the church finishes, there's too many people asking questions. I've just never had time. Well, that's an issue. 那如果你说是因为弟兄姊妹们挺多的，聚会结束了，很多人在问他很多问题，我没有时间问他，或者他没有时间问我，那就是很大的问题。Because the Bible says here, and we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you. 因为这里说弟兄们，我劝你们敬重那在你们中间劳苦的人。And this is specifically those who lead you in worship, 特别是领导你聚会的人。And this is how it's supposed to be. 应该是这样子。1 Timothy 5:17 says, 提摩太前书第5章17节说 Let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. 那善于管理的教会的长老，当以外配受加倍的敬罚，那劳苦传道找到的人更当如此。Okay, look at the slide above. 你看上面的照片，对。So look at here. So these are every single person in the church. Every single person in the church has different expectations that they have towards not just their pastor, but people in the church and other brothers and sisters. 所有的教会，所有的弟兄姊妹们，他们有自己的要求，他们可能没有说出来要求是什么，但是他们自己有自己的要求，自己的需要的帮助或者需要的地方。And look here, this is very, very, very typical. 你看这个照片，就是很多弟兄姊妹们是有这样的要求 ，and sometimes they express it， 有时候他们会说出来 ，but sometimes they don't， 但是有时候不会。And so look here, and I'm not saying that these are good or bad， 我没有说这是好还是不好 ，but this is reality， 就是真实的。And so some people they need help， 有一些人需要更多的帮助 ，some people don't， 有一些人不需要那么多的帮助。However, we all are brothers and sisters, and we should know each other within the church.We should have a strong relationship if it's possible. 那如果可能的话，我们都应该有更好的关系，因为我们是什么？我们都是神的儿女们。And so some people need more comfort. 有一些人需要更多的安慰。Some people need to feel love. 有一些需要更多感觉我的牧师真的爱我。Some might need discipline. 也需要门教我。And so there's different areas and different people have different things. And not just every single person has the exact same needs in their life. And different times in people's lives have different needs. 那所有的弟兄姊妹们的需要都不一样的，而且你就比如这夏天你的需要可能明年的夏天不一样的。And so the pastor, one of the things that the pastor tries to do is he tries to help every single person.However, there's going to be times when this person or that person feels like I'm not being helped the way that I should. 那我是想帮助全部的他的小样们，但是有时候他可能感觉，或者有弟兄或者姊妹可能感觉他没有那么爱我，或者没有那么帮助我。And it's not that he doesn't want to, it's just that sometimes it's hard to have it all balance out. 那如果他感觉我的牧师不是那么爱我，那应该不是他不爱你，应该是他想给你跟所有的弟兄姊妹们一样的爱，一样的帮助。And so the bigger the church is, the bigger the need is. 那如果教会是更多人口更多的弟兄姊妹们更多的，那需要的地方是更多的。However, in the Old Testament, especially in the Old Testament and the New Testament, we never see these massive congregations of people, except for those that are following Jesus and whatnot. But usually when people gather together and worship, when the church age starts, it's in smaller communities. 那除了耶稣没有那么多人会跟着一个人，特别是教会时代开始的时候，他们的聚会比较少的。And that's so that they can better help, better pastor, better feed. And that's when the church does get bigger, then that's one of the reasons why there needs to be multiple elders. 那如果教会是更大的话，那就是为什么需要更多的老仆们。And so in 1 Timothy 5:17 says, "Let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor." 那善于管理教会的长老，当以外配受加倍的加封。你劳苦传道找到人的，更当如此 especially those which labor in the word and doctrine. And so this is the church body should always be looking at showing honor, respect, especially where it is due. 那教会的弟兄姊妹们应该知道他们哪里，他们的牧师，他们的长老，如果他们很努力释放耶稣，很努力学习，很努力教你们他的神的话语，那这样的人应该有更多的荣耀。And so how is your relationship with your pastor? 那你和你的牧师的关系是怎么样的？ And if you say it's not good, 那如果我是不好的，那为什么？那 then why? Because Paul says, we beseech you. 然后他说，弟兄们，我们劝你们。He's begging them. He's saying, hey, please listen up. 他说我求你们，你们听我的话。To know them, 你要好好认识他们。That labor among you, 敬重那在你们中间的劳苦的人。And this is how it should be, because the closer your relationship is towards your pastor, towards your leadership, then the more honor and respect you can give them where it's needed. 那如果你的关系是更好，你更了解、更明白你的牧师或者你的长老，你可以给他们更多的荣耀，更多的帮助。So number one, be self-aware. How is your relationship with your pastor? 那第一个，自省你和你的牧师的关系是怎么样的。Number two, How well do you know your pastor? 第二个，你对你的牧师的了解的多少？ And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you. 弟兄们，我们劝你们敬重在你们的中间劳苦的人。It is common for people to be unkind, critical, or indifferent towards their pastors when they do not do something too well. 那这是很普通的，很多弟兄姊妹们，如果他们觉得牧师做得不好，还是说了不对，那他们平常可能有很多自己的来抱怨，或者自己的来不平安的地方，或者有地方他们觉得不是那么好。How to say like cynical？ 就是他们不是来批评他们，但是他们觉得就是他用口语没有给他们尊重。And so cynical means to be like if you're cynical of a person, it means that you don't have a lot of respect for that person, or you're attacking them specifically with your words. 那 cynical 是什么意思？就是说你在你的眼中，你的心中对这个人没有那么多的尊重他，特别是用你的话语来批评他，风凉话，风凉话，就是这个意思。And so this is one thing that all of us need to remember is that pastors are human beings as well. 我们都需要提醒自己，牧师们，你的教会的领导者们，我们都是什么？都是人类。And so pastors, leaders in the church will make mistakes. And maybe they're not trying to make a mistake, but in your eyes, they didn't meet your expectations. And the reality is that this is very normal. 那我们需要知道什么？你们的教会，你的教会的领导者、牧师们，他们也是人类。所以如果他们没有超过你的要求，那就是应该的。有时候会遇到这个问题。And sometimes us as Christians, we have towards our pastors, towards people in the church, we have unrealistic expectations. We have expectations that are up here when the reality is it should be lower down some. 那我们基督徒们，我们弟兄姊妹们，有的时候我们的要求对我们的牧师或者领导者的比较高。那我们应该，如果是高的话，那我们要好好考虑，我对我的牧师的要求太高了吗？如果是的话，可以改一点。And sometimes the pastor does need to be corrected. 有时候牧师也需要你告诉他哪里是不对的，然后帮他改变。But just to think about something. 那我想你们考虑一个问题。That is, usually in the church, there's a lot more critics than there are people that give words of encouragement or say that this really helped them or that really helped this person or that person. 那我们也需要了解在教会里面的抱怨的人比较多，然后如果有人告诉牧师，那你真的帮助我，或者你的讲道的或者内容真的帮助我还是我们，这样的平常是更少的。And so it is common for people to do this. And it's not bad, but when it happens all the time, it can really start to affect the pastor. 那如果是批评他的话，有时候是没有问题，但是如果是每周的话，会以后真的影响你的牧师。And so that is, we should always, as Christians, remind ourselves that God has chosen these pastors to lead his church and where they are. And if you're in that church, then you should also remind yourself that, hey, this is who God has chosen to lead us. 那我们也需要提醒自己这个牧师是上帝选择，是耶稣安排的，给这个教会，给这个城市，这个地方。那我们也需要考虑这个问题 because anytime you say something that is negative or attacks a pastor, you're also saying the same thing towards the Lord. 那如果你用你的话语来攻击你的牧师，或者耶稣的牧师也是来攻击耶稣。 And I'm not talking about like any pastor, because I know you could say, but there are false pastors. And if it's a false pastor, someone not by Christ, specifically they don't meet the requirements, then that's a totally different scenario. That's not what I'm talking about. 那你说那是牧师，如果他不是耶稣选择的话，就看圣经的要求，那这不是我的意思，因为这样的人不算了。但是如果是耶稣的安排，耶稣的准备的话，那你要好好考虑你对他的关系是怎么样的，也对他说是什么。Hebrews 13:7 says, 希伯来书13章7节说 Remember them which have rule over you, who have spoken unto you the word of God, whose faith follow, considering the end of their conversation. 从前引导你们，传神知道给你们的人，你们要想念他们，效法他们的信心，留心看他们为人的结局。And this is saying to remind yourselves, 然后就是提醒自己 who's leading you, 谁是领导你。And this is, if this person's leading you, most of the time, most pastors, they want to lead you the best way they can. 普通的牧师，我们平常是什么？真的想领导你更好的。We don't try to lead you into errors and mistakes. Most pastors don't. 普通的牧师不想领导你迷路，他们想帮助你。And we see things in the church that probably you are unaware of. 我们平常在教会里面找到教会的问题，你们可能看不到或者没有发现的。And so often, if we choose something, it's because we believe that it is the best choice for not just yourself, but also for the church. 那我们选择什么？我们选择一个问题，可能是我们自己发现的，就是教会或者你自己的很大的问题，然后我们想改变这个问题。And so when we choose to do something, or we say, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this, or we're not going to do this, we're going to do that, it's often because it is the best choice. And maybe you don't see it that right away. Or some people in the church see that as an issue, the others don't. And so if you don't see eye to eye with your pastor, just trust the leaders in the church. Because most of the time they're making their choices based on what they believe is to be the best for that certain situation. 那我们平常选择的问题是为了是最好的，就比如如果你发现了教会有问题的话，那这个牧师选择我们要做这样子，不是那样子。你要相信你的牧师的选择，因为他会选择他觉得是最好的，不是最不好的。然后有的时候在教会里面有一些的弟兄们或者姊妹们可能感觉同意跟牧师同意，觉得就是最好的，但是你可能感觉为什么他们要选择那样的答案？我觉得就是没有那么清楚，或者你不懂，或者你觉得是那么不好的，那你要好好听他们的话，因为他们会选择是最好的，不是只有为了你，是为了教会。然后你要相信你们的领导者。And the Bible says to remember those who have rule over you. 从前引导你们，全程知道给你们的人，你们相信他们，想念他们。You want to trust them, have faith in those who are leading you. Why? Because if they've been chosen by Christ and they're going to do so, they're going to choose the best, not only for yourself and for them, but also for the church. 那如果他们是真的是耶稣选择的话，他们会对你还有你的属灵会选择是最好的，而且是对他们自己最好的，还有对教会最好的。And one of the things we never want to do is to openly attack your pastor. If you believe that your pastor is wrong, one of the things that you don't want to do is in the middle of church, get up and start attacking them. 那我们一个方法，我们不要选择，不要做，是在聚会里面来批评你的牧师。And so this is something that our church has experienced just a couple times over the past 4 years or over 3 years. It's only happened 2 or 3 times. And that is, the time and the place is not to, during the service, to interrupt other people and to attack the pastor, but to say so afterwards or even before, and to address the issue, if possible, face to face. 那因为我们的教会现在是第4年，我们只有几次遇到这个问题，就是在聚会里面有一个人保证 他们非常生气来批评牧师或者别人，那就是真的不好，不要影响别人的礼拜的时间，赞美耶稣的时间。如果有问题的话，可以前面还是后面跟你的牧师一对一说，还是别的弟兄姊妹们说。And remember, like, if you do so, if you explode, it's not just towards your brothers and sisters in the church, it's also towards Christ, because it is time to worship Him, not ourselves. 因为我们如果有问题的话，还是有矛盾的话，你不要非常生气，然后保障你的脾气或者你的想法，你要安慰自己，安静自己，以后可以跟你的牧师或者有谁的问题的话跟他们讨论，因为这个时间不是为了你，是为了赞美耶稣。And remember those who are leading you, because they have been chosen by the Lord. 那要好好提醒自己，他们是这样的选择，是因为他们觉得是最好的，而且是耶稣选择的。And so what I'm going to do from like these 6 here are the idea that I'm conveying are these are people, these are men that God has chosen. I'm not talking about false prophets. I'm not talking about false teachers or false pastors. I'm talking about the average godly pastor that God has all over the world, in every area, in every city, men that are faithfully leading small congregations or big congregations, whatever. I'm just talking about the average pastor. These are people that meet the requirements, that are teaching to the best of abilities the word of God. 那我的意思不是假的牧师、假的先知、假的或者like低级度，这不是我的意思。我的意思是，就是普通的牧师们，不管他们的聚会是有很多人来参加还是比较少的，不是这个问题。问题是他们是普通的牧师，他们想最好的教你，最好的领导你，这样的人，我们这6个的点是对这样的牧师。所以我们不要说，那你不能说所有的牧师，因为也有假的牧师，因为今天晚上我们不讨论假的牧师。So number 2, how well do you know your pastor? 所以第二个，你对你的牧师了解多少？ Because if you don't understand your pastor, then how can you know them and how they labor among you? 那如果你不认识、不了解你的牧师，那你这么这里保罗说，我劝你们的敬重那在你们的中间的劳苦的人，那你怎么认识呢？如果你不了解他们，怎么认识他们吗？ Number 3, do you know the pastors that have been ordained by the Lord himself? 第3个，你知道你的牧师已经被主亲自任命了吗？ So there are, in this world, like last week we talked about how on TikTok there are self-proclaimed pastors. 就比如我上周也说了，在就是 TikTok 是国外的抖音，有自己的选择，自己成为的模式。And I'm not talking about these type of people. 我的意思不是他们。Because these type of people, they don't actually have a church. They don't actually have a congregation. Their people are their fans. 因为这样的牧师，其实他们不是牧师，因为他们没有教会，没有弟兄姊妹们每周来参加他们的聚会，他们只有他们的抖音的粉丝。我的意思不是他们。Because there are people, you can make yourself a pastor. 你可以说我自己是牧师。But just because you say yourself as a pastor doesn't necessarily mean you're a pastor. 那如果你说自己是牧师的话，那不知道他是真的还是假的。And so there is a saying, 所以有一句话 there's a saying that if a pastor can choose any other job in this world and be content with that job, then he should go and do that job and not be a pastor. He should pursue the other job. 那有一句话，如果一位牧师可以选择世界上任何其他的工作，并且满足于那个工作，那么他应该去做那个工作，而不是做一个牧师应该追求那个工作，明白吗？ The reason why this is said, you can go down. 为什么他们说这句话 ？Next one, 下面，next one, 下面，这里。The reason why they say this, 为什么他们说这句话吗 ？is because being a pastor is is very, very difficult. 因为做牧师真的是很辛苦的。And to give you an idea, 我帮你们了解. So some people, you might think that, well, all you have to do is you have to prepare a sermon maybe once, twice, or 3 times a week. How difficult is that? 那你说了每周要准备讲道1次、2次、3次，那除了这个你还做什么？ And so a lot of people think that a pastor just, other than preparing the sermons, that's it. 他们觉得除了准备讲道还要做什么？ Well, first off, preparing a sermon takes a long time. 准备讲道要花了很多时间。And so apart from just you know going through a book and just talking about it, there's a lot of background work that needs to be done. 所以就这边除了like 研究还有表达这本书就是 like 帖撒罗尼迦前书第5章，我们现在在第5章12、13节对吧？ So except for like tonight we're in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verses 12 and 13. So except for just expounding what it says, 所以除了表达他们的意思I also spend a lot of time reading other pastors, what their commentaries, what their thoughts are, their ideas, other theologians. 所以我也花了更多时间读别的牧师的了解，别的神学者的了解 and look at the other languages, Hebrew, Greek, Chinese, and English. 所以还有学习希伯来文、希腊文、中文还有英文 and so all that takes time. 所以就要花时间。But apart from that, every day there's people in the church that ask for help. 所以除了这个问题，每天有弟兄姊妹们问我，你可以为这个问题祷告，或者我需要你这样的帮助我。每天有这样的弟兄姊妹们。And so sometimes some weeks is a lot more than others. 有时候是更多的，有时候是比较少的。And there's a lot of different things that people ask. 所以有很多不同的问题。And sometimes it has to do with work. Sometimes it has to do with like money issues. 有时候是跟关于钱的问题，或是工作的问题。Or sometimes it has to do with family issues, 或者是教会的或者家庭的问题。And sometimes it has to do with their personal relationship with God. 有时候是跟他们跟上帝的自己的关系是怎么样的。And sometimes what needs to be done is that the pastor has to sit down and just listen. It might be 30 minutes, it might be an hour. 有时候牧师需要跟他一起坐下，或者几个人坐下，就听他们的分享。这个也需要花时间。And if every day there's this, that takes up a lot of time. 那如果每天也有的话，那就是要花很多时间。So this is what church is, 就是教会。And so this is what the pastor has to do. So there is the saying here. So 就是这句话 it says that if a person wants to be a pastor, or they feel led to be a pastor, 那如果有人想成为一位牧师 but in their heart, they could do another job. 但是在他们的心里中可以选择别的工作。And they could choose another job and be content with it. 那他们可以选择别的工作，而且选择那个工作是很满足。Then I would say, go do that job. Don't be a pastor. 我会选择你去做哪个工作，不做牧师。Because when God chooses a pastor to be his pastor, God puts that in their hearts. There is no escaping that. 那如果上帝选择这个人成为他的牧师，把这个想法放在他心里中，不管他做什么，他必须做这样的工作，他不可以逃避这个感觉。For example, if you talk to many pastors and you ask them their story, how did they become a pastor? Ask them their background. All of us will have something similar in common. 不管是哪个牧师，你就问他们，你怎么成为牧师？你什么时候开始有这样的感觉？这样的领导，他们的故事都不一样的，可是我们的感觉都是一样的。For example, myself, 就比如我自己。The first time I really started to think about this was when I was 5 years old. 我第一次开始思考这个问题，我是5岁。And that was when my grandma, my dad's mom, asked me, or asked all of us grandkids what we wanted to be when we were older. 就是我爸爸的妈妈，就是我姥姥，她问我们所有的孩子们，她所有的孙子，我们长大以后要做什么？ And my response was to be a pastor. 我的回复她是做一位牧师。And from that point on, and I can remember that very, very clearly, like just like it was yesterday. 我还记住很清清楚楚的他问我这个问题，就是跟 like 我昨天一样的。 And from that point on till now, I knew that one day God would call me to be a pastor. I just had no idea it would be China. 就比如我从那时候到现在，我就知道以后我要成为耶稣的牧师。那时候我不知道是在中国。And many pastors have the same thing. 很多牧师他们的故事一样的。They know that in their heart that this is what they're called to do. This is why they're created. 他们知道在他们心里知道就是耶稣创造他们是为了做牧师。And if, for example, if I said, okay, I'm not going to be a pastor anymore, I'm going to do something else. 就比如如果今天说我不继续做牧师，我选择别的工作 because I can make a lot of money. 因为我可以赚很多钱。I would never, ever, ever be at peace. My relationship with Christ would always have issues. And every time I go to be praying and thinking, I'm not in the will of God. 就比如如果我选择别的工作，不做牧师的话，会影响我跟耶稣的关系，而且我每次在祷告的时候，我肯定知道我现在是迷路了，上帝不会给我平安，会打扰我的心。Because when you become a pastor, it has nothing to do with making money. 所以你选择做牧师的话，跟你赚钱没有关系。And so you know, become a pastor. Maybe you'll make money off of a pastor. Maybe your life will be okay. 那你成为一位牧师的话，那你以后可能没有钱的问题。But most pastors, they don't do it to make money. Most pastors know that if they become pastors, they might be poor. 很多人知道，如果他们成为一位牧师的话，以后可能没有那么多钱。And yes, there are rich pastors in the world. And yes, there are pastors that are well off. And there might be many reasons for that. 那我知道在这个世界上有很多有钱的牧师们，但是他们到哪里可能有很多不同的原因。And a lot of them make money because they're not chosen by Christ. But you can't say that about every single one. For instance, Charles Spurgeon actually had a lot of money. We just didn't know it until after he died. 就比如我们不能说很多牧师有很多钱，是因为他们做坏事。因为还有一些的牧师们，他们有挺多钱，但是因为是上帝真的祝福他们。就比如 like Charles Spurgeon. But he made a lot of money, but he actually gave a lot of it away. He started multiple orphanages, and we didn't find out until after he died because he kept it a secret. 因为他开了很多孤儿的园。因为他以后他的教会赚了很多钱，但是没有人知道。他去世之后就发现了。他用这么多钱是为了开很多孤儿园。And so we don't become pastors to make money. 所以我们不做为牧师是为了赚钱。And we don't going to choose a pastor because we think it's going to be an easier job than other jobs. 我们也不选择作为牧师，是因为我们觉得是选择这个生活是更顺服的，更容易，更简单，不是。And so this is, as a matter of fact, apart from just physical problems that all of us have, 除了我们的身体健康的问题 there's also spiritual battles. 还有我们的属灵的斗战。And if you're a pastor, then sometimes the spiritual battles are way more intense than the average Christian. 那作为牧师，有时候我们的属灵的斗战真的超过普通的弟兄姊妹们的属灵的斗战。And all of us have spiritual attacks. 我们基督徒都有的时候会遇到属灵的斗战。But a pastor, think about that. If a pastor is leading a church and is trying to do so to the best of his ability, then you know for sure they're going to be a target of Satan. 那如果你知道这个牧师上最好的领导他的教会，领导这个教会成为圣洁的教会，那你也知道这个人撒旦会选择来攻击这个人。Because the idea is that if he can get the pastor to fall into sin, whatever, then the church will follow suit. 那因为他知道，如果他能让这个牧师摔倒的话，或者摔到坑里，那教会也会跟着他一起摔倒在坑里。And so that is one of the reasons why, think about it, cut off the head. Cut off the head, the whole body stops working. 那就是把刀就是掉出来那个头怎么说 ？Cut off the head 就是砍掉头，那身体都不会动，对吧？那教会一样的。So the pastor has physical problems as well as spiritual battles that have to be fought every week. 所以牧师每周都有身体上的问题和灵性的上的斗争。The pastor has enemies that can be seen before him as well as enemies who hate him and want to destroy him and the church he pastors. 牧师有他能看见的敌人，也有恨他上和要毁灭他tor所牧养的教会的敌人。The pastor may never have enough money to buy his own house. 牧师可能永远都没有足够的钱买自己的房子。Some pastors the reality is some pastors just don't make enough money. 有时候有一些牧师们，他们赚的钱就挺少的，没办法自己买房子。And so you might be thinking, well, buying a house, that's not needed. But the thing is when you get married, let's just be realistic. Most women want to have a house, have their own house. Why? That's just how God created us, or the women, I should say. And so for guys, like right now I'm single, so to me it's not that big of a deal. But I think it would be a big deal once I get married that probably down the line, the wife isn't always going to want to be renting a house and moving every single year. Sooner or later, she's going to want to settle because that's how God created women to settle and to raise kids in a safe environment. 因为上帝这样的创造姊妹们，就比如我现在是单身，对吧？那如果每年换新的房子没关系，但是如果以后真的结婚，那我的太太以后可能想有自己的房子，有自己安全的地方，也以后可以生孩子。这样的长大，明白吗？ But the reality is that sometimes pastors just don't have enough money even to buy a house. So this kind of burden might become the wife's burden as well. 那如果钱很少的话，那这个压力也可能成为他的老婆的压力。And so think about this, and you're thinking, well, why doesn't the pastor just get another job? And the thing is, well, if the pastor has another job, then that time is already going to be pulling away from the work of the church, which is the work of the church is always there, always there. 那如果你说那这个牧师也可以一半工作一半做牧师，那如果这样的话，他在教会里面花时间更少的，但是问题还是挺多的。And the more people that come to the church, the more problems there are, the more things that need to be done. 那如果人多的话，那教会的问题多，弟兄姊妹们需要更多的帮助，更多的安慰，更多的更多的领导。And so the more people that come to church, the more problems that there are, the more people that need to be comforted, the more people that need to be led, the more people that need to be fed, and all these different things. And if the pastor is also having to work, it's going to cut them back even more. It will, in the end, have a medicinal effect upon the church. 以后会影响教会。And the last thing we want is we don't want people leaving the church thinking, my pastor just has no time whatsoever for me because he's always busy with his work and this and this and this. And if that's the case, then that will be a big issue. 那如果有弟兄姊妹们说，我牧师从来没有时间帮助我，因为他老是在上班，还有自己家庭的问题，还有别的教会的事情，所以最好的 so the best is what? For the pastor to be full-time in the church. But if he's full-time in the church, he might not have a lot of money. 那最好是他每天在教会里面上班，但是钱可能不多。And so these are just 7 different reasons why people say that if you can do another type of job, then do that. Don't choose to be a pastor. 那这7个问题只有7个。如果可以做别的工作的话，你要好好选择它，因为这7个会所有的牧师们会遇到这个问题。And these seven issues all pastors will face. The pastor has always to carefully and affectionately check his heart before the Lord, lest it influence the church. So the burden of the church and how he leads the church is always on him. 那他的负担老是在他的心里，牧师必须在主就是耶和华面前小心谨慎的检查自己的心，以免影响教会。因为没有 for example, if you're just a normal Christian coming to the church, if your heart's not right before the Lord, it might affect a few people in the church, but it's not going to lead the entire church astray. But the same can't be said for the pastor. 那如果你是就是普通的弟兄姊妹来参加聚会，然后如果你现在的心里有罪的话，或者在耶稣的面前你们的关系现在不是那么好，那会影响几个人，但是不会完全影响教会。可是牧师不是这样子。 And so if the pastor is insane or the pastor's heart is not right, it's not just going to affect him. It's going to affect the entire church and how he leads the church. So it's it can add extra burden upon a pastor. 所以可以给这个牧师更多的压力。The pastor is responsible for every soul that attends the church he leads and will have to give an account before the Lord for them. 所以牧师对每个参加的陶素的带领的教会的人负责，并在主面前为他们的交账。Hebrews 13:17 希伯来书13章17节 Obey them, have rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. 你们要依从那些引导你们的，且要顺服，因他们为你们的灵魂时刻警醒，好像那将来照正的人。你们要使他们照的时候有快乐，不致忧愁。若忧愁，就与你们无益了。The pastor here, every single pastor, one day will stand before Christ and have to give an account for why they did what they did, why they taught what they taught, why they led the way they led. 所有的牧师有一天在审判天的时候，要告诉耶稣一对一告诉他，为什么他们选择这个道，为什么他们这样的教他的教会，为什么他们这样的领导他的教会。And so that is a heavy burden upon all pastors. 所以就是给所有的牧师很大的负担，很大的压力。And it says here that your job, 这里说什么 that you should submit to the pastor. Actually, because by you submitting towards the pastor and towards those who lead in the church, it's actually for your own benefit. 然后这里说什么要顺服，你的牧师要顺服你的领导者，因为是为了你的属灵是更好的。Because it says that if you say, well, I'm not going to submit to my pastor, I'm going to do whatever I want. 那如果你说我不想听我牧师的话，我想做什么就做什么。Actually, it's going to come back and hurt you yourself. 其实会以后来攻击你自己。And if you get into trouble or into sin, it's only going to because of your choices. 那如果以后你自己有很大的问题，遇到问题或者犯罪的话，是因为你自己创造的问题。And so, because the idea here is that the pastor, because he has a lot of responsibility and burdens before, and he'll have to give an account before Christ on how he lead or didn't lead the church, then he's going to choose what's best, and if he's choosing what's best, it's also for your good. 那因为他以后要告诉耶稣为什么他选择叫你们这样的或者这样的领导他的教会，是因为他知道以后要告诉耶稣为什么，所以他会选择是最好的，而且他会选择是你对你自己最好的。And so do so. Submit yourselves to them, and it'll bring you joy, and it won't cause issues in the church. 所以顺服他们，以后也会成为你的喜悦，你的快乐。And also that it won't bring grief, but it'll bring joy. 也不会忧愁你，会给你快乐。Because in the end, it will have the way you respond to your pastor will indirectly come back to affect you. 那你对你的牧师是好还是不好，以后会也影响你。And think about this. If you are in a church for a while, and your pastor is a godly pastor, and if you're always critical, you're always negative, you're always talking bad about him, you're actually doing so to Jesus Christ. 那如果你的牧师真的想好好领导你的教会，你参加的教会，但是你老是在说了我牧师不好的，或是他很笨，还是他不懂什么什么的，其实你也是来攻击耶稣，因为是耶稣的选择。And the pastor is representing Christ in his words here in the church. 牧师也是有点像耶稣，他想领导你，用耶稣的话语领导你，爱你。所以如果你老是来攻击他，其实也是老是来攻击耶稣。And here it says to obey them, have rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your soul. So they're doing so because they want to protect you, they want to help you, they want to keep you from sin, keep you from the enemy. 这里说，你们要依从那些引导你们的，且要顺服他们。为什么？因为告诉你，因他们为你们灵魂时刻警醒，他们想保护你，他们不想你犯罪，也想从你的敌人保护你。But if you're fighting against them, then you're fighting against those who are trying to protect you. 那如果你来攻击他们，那你也是来攻击你的保护。So do you know that your pastor has been ordained by the Lord himself? 所以你知道你的牧师已经被主亲自任命了吗？ Because he will have to give an account. 因为以后他会告诉耶稣为什么他选择，为什么他这样的领导你们。And when the pastor has to give an account, that is always a heavy, heavy burden upon him that he will carry the rest of his life. 那以后他会一辈子有这样的负担。Whether it's one person or it's a ton of people. 如果是一个人还是很多人。Each single person, the pastor will have to give an account for. 那在审判天的时候，他所有的人，如果是一个弟兄或者好多，都要告诉耶稣为什么他这样的领导他们。And I have to tell Jesus why he led this person, these people, this direction. Number 4, 第四个 How much do you esteem your pastor? 你有多尊重你的牧师 Verse 13, 13节 And esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake, and be at peace among yourselves. 又因他们所做的工，用爱心格外尊重他们，你们也要彼此和睦。Oh, sorry, that should just be in esteem. 尊重他们 and esteem them. So how do you esteem your pastor? 那你怎么尊重你的牧师？ And so how do you esteem them? Well, one way you don't esteem them is by always being critical and attacking every decision that they make and every choice that they make. 那如果你老是来攻击他们，批评他们，那就是尊重他们吗？因为他们的选择是为了你的帮助，不是为了你的坏事。So appreciation, and there might be many ways that you can esteem them. 那有很多不同的尊重你要给他们。Maybe you know what they really like, and maybe you want to bake them a cake. I don't know. 可能是你知道他们喜欢吃什么，就来做蛋糕送给他们。Or maybe you want to, give them money so that they can go on a trip with their family. 那也可能你要给他们钱，为了以后他们可以旅游。I remember when I was a long time ago. This is back when I was in high school. 我在高中的时候 there was a pastor that was in our church, and he wasn't the head pastor, but he was one of the senior pastors. I don't even know how it works. 他不是最大的牧师，但是他是老库，然后他已经做了牧师30多年。然后我在高中的时候 when I was in high school, every semester I would buy him a $50 Starbucks card and just give it to him because I knew he liked coffee, and I knew he didn't have a whole lot of money to always be buying it. And I was in high school, I didn't have a whole lot of money, but every semester I'd buy him like a $50 or to $100 Starbucks card. 然后每个学期我会买一个星巴克的卡给他，可能like $50美元100美元，因为我知道他没有那么多的钱。可是他挺喜欢喝咖啡。And that was just something that I did. I didn't have to do. 不是我应该做的，是我想做的。Why? And that was one way in my heart that I could say, hey, Pastor, I love you and I respect what you're doing. 就是在我自己的心里，我觉得牧师，我真的爱你，因为我也想尊重你。And I knew that he liked it, and he was older. He was at the time he was in his 70s. 那时候他70多岁。And so, but he would drink coffee every day, and he just, I don't know, the first time I gave it to him, he almost started crying. 我第一次给他的时候，他差不多开始哭， and he was just very, very moved. 他非常感动。And for me, that was huge, a huge blessing to me. 然后就是也成为我的祝福。Because when you see that, here's a man who's been faithful for many, 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 many years, and he doesn't have a lot of money. And you're thinking, well, it's just a small gift card, 50, 100 kwai, what, or 50, $100, not kwai, $100. It's not that much. It isn't. But for him, it was. 那你说就是50块，而50美元，100美元不是那么多，但是对他来说是很多。然后他真的是已经做了牧师30多年，他已经这么老，所以他真的很感动，因为这个告诉他，他的小羊真的爱他。And this is just one of the ways it says, and to esteem them. There's many ways you can esteem your pastor or those over you. 所以这里说要尊重他们，所以有很多不同的方法。And so there's many ways that this can be done. 有很多不同的方法可以尊重他们。The elders who rule well should be considered of double honor. 那上帝不是刚刚说了，如果他们做了非常好的牧师，要给他们2次的尊重或者荣耀。1 Corinthians 9:14, 哥林多前书第9章14节 And even so hath the Lord ordained that they which preach the gospel should live off the gospel. 主也是这样的命定，叫传福音的靠着福音的养生。And so the idea here is if they do it full time, then they should get their money from the church from doing this. 那这个意思是，如果他们是 full time 的牧师，那他们的钱也应该是从教会来的，从他们的教会的弟兄姊妹们来的。And so a pastor should get paid by the church his fair wage. So if he does it full time, then that should be his living. 那如果他是is it 全部的 how to say full 全职的牧师，那他的钱也是应该是从教会来的。And so these are ways that there's many different ways that the church body can esteem their pastors. 所以教会还有教会的弟兄姊妹们有很多方法可以来尊重他们的牧师，他们的领导者。However, that could be abused. 那也可以利用这个方法 and the pastor can use it to make a lot of money. 也可以用这个方法去赚了很多钱 but that's not the idea here, and we don't have that issue because we're not that big. 然后我们没有这个问题，我们教会也不是那么多，而且1/10不多。But these are just many ways that you can esteem your pastor. 所以有很多不同的方法，你可以自己尊重你的牧师。So be self-aware. How much do you esteem your pastor? 所以自省，你有对尊重你的牧师。Number 5. Do you love your pastor for the work he does? 第5个，你因牧师所做的更而爱你的牧师吗？ And very highly in love for the work's sake. 又因他们所做的工用爱心格外。And here it's saying that the love should come for what they do, not necessarily the person himself. 那因为不是这个人要爱他们，是因为他的工作要爱他们。And so this is saying, but my pastor is ugly. I don't like him. 那你说我的牧师很丑，我不太喜欢他。It's not saying to love them because of the way they look or the way they dress. 不是因为他们穿着什么衣服还是帅不帅。It says to love them for the work that they're doing. 是他们的工作要爱他们。And so this is if they are trying to be a good pastor, then they're trying to lead you in the word of the Lord, teach you the word of the Lord, feed you, protect you. Then that's how your love should be coming from that. 所以如果他们保护你，领导你，用神的话语教你，为你，那你的爱是从哪里来的？ Paul told Timothy to be diligent. Faithful elders are worthy of double respect and generous pay, particularly those who are most diligent and sacrificial in preaching and teaching. 保罗告诉提摩太那些的牧师重心的传道，尤其是那些的是那传道讲道，他们的尊重还有赚钱应该是多一点。为什么？因为他们真的很辛苦，花了更多时间学习，更多时间教导还有传道。And so think about this. 所以你考虑这个问题。How do they guide you? 他们怎么带领你？ How do they correct you? 他们也怎么改变你？ How do they help you to grow? 他们怎么帮你 厂章。And so there's some things, some things the pastor is very, very clear. 有时候牧师可以看得很清楚。But sometimes like the pastor, like if you don't tell him, maybe he doesn't know. He doesn't know every single thing that's going on in every single person's life. 那牧师也不是知道你的生活所有的事情。如果你没有告诉他的话，那他也怎么帮助你？ And so sometimes the pastor needs maybe you to tell him or ask for advice so that he knows so he can better help you. You don't just have unrealistic expectations. 那你也不能对你的牧师有要求是那么高，你没告诉他，然后你觉得他为什么他没有帮助我？如果呢你没有告诉他的话，那他怎么帮助你吗？ And this is something that I've actually encountered it a few times. So 我也已经遇到了几次。And that sometimes there's issues in the church and people want help, but they don't say what the issues are. And then when no help comes to the issues, they get angry, they get upset. But if the issue was made known, if you tell people about it, then there's ways that the pastor can help. 那如果生活有问题的话，但是你没有说出来，以后没有得到你的答案，没有得到你的帮助，就成为生气。但是如果你没有分享的话，那牧师怎么帮助你吗？所以要考虑这个问题。And esteem means to go beyond all measures. 然后尊重是超越一切。This phrase that Paul used here calls for limitless respect for the church leaders. 保罗在这里使用的这话是什么？是呼吁对教会的领袖无限的尊敬。The work of the shepherd to do is to minister the word. That is the main job of the pastor. 那牧师的最大的工作是什么？是传道的事工。2 Corinthians 8:4 and 5 says, 哥林多后书第8章4到5节说 praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering of the saints. 再三的求我们准他们在这公祭上图的恩强上有分 and this they did, not as we hoped, but first gave their own selves to the Lord and also unto us by the will of God. 并且他们所做的不端照我们所想望的，更照神的旨意。先把自己的心给主，又归附了我们。And so this is how the church should be run. 那教会应该是这样子。And when there's a need and especially when it comes in terms of respect to the pastors, we should all be conscious of how we respond to our pastors. 我们应该都自己知道我们对我们的牧师们是怎么样的。而且如果有地方要改变啊，你自己应该知道是哪里。This doesn't mean only money, but also blessing your pastor in many other ways. 而且不是这个意思，不是只有钱提供他们，也是很多祝福的地方。你自己考虑一下怎么做。For example, maybe you're really good at cooking, or maybe you're really good at making things. 就比如如果你做饭是很厉害的，还是你能真的手盖东西很厉害，那你可以给他考虑怎么表达你对你的牧师的爱。So do you love your pastor for the work he does? 所以你因牧师所做的工而爱你的牧师吗？ The last one, 最后的 number 6. Are you at peace with your pastor? 你和你的牧师和平相处吗？ And be at peace among yourselves. 你们也要彼此和睦。And this is extremely important because if there's an issue between you and your church or you and your pastor, it's going to affect your relationship with Christ. 那如果你跟你的牧师没有和睦或者有问题的话，那也会影响你跟耶稣的关系。And this is what Paul was instructing to this church right before the end of this letter. 那保罗准备写完这信，他说了，你们要对你们的牧师有和睦，因为如果没有和睦的话，你的属灵的生活会以后变差。And so if there's not peace between you and your pastor or those that are leading your church, then it's going to have an indirect or direct right away effect upon your spirit and your relationship with Christ. And there's many ways that this can be. If you're always fighting and resisting against your pastor, your leaderships in the church, that's going to have a huge impact on your relationship with Christ. 那如果你老是在拒绝你的牧师的建议，或者你的教会的长老的建议，那会很快影响你跟上帝的关系。And so the church should always be conscious of how they treat their pastors. 那教会所有的弟兄姊妹们应该老是知道他们对他们的牧师们是怎么样的。Do they give respect? 他们给尊重吗 or not? 或者没有 If not, why? 如果没有的话，那为什么 And if there's ways, how can you love your pastor more? 那你应该怎么更爱你的牧师 And think about this, like how you show respect, how you love your pastor, how you give to your pastor is also an extension of your love towards Christ. 那你怎么尊重你的牧师，怎么爱你的牧师，怎么来提供你的牧师的需要，也是你对耶稣表达你自己的爱。所以考虑这个问题。So, 6 areas of self-awareness concerning you toward your pastor. 关于你对你的牧师自省的6个方面。Number 1, how is your relationship with your pastor? 第一个，你和牧师的关系怎么样？ How well do you know your pastor? 你对你的牧师了解多少？ Do you know that your pastor has been ordained by the Lord himself? And does it reflect upon your respect towards him? 那你知道你的牧师已经被主亲自任命了吗？而且就是会影响你对